The day the world started taking Drake serious was on April 17th, 2012. Now, Drake up until this point hasn't had like a real history of beef, and even though he has dropped bangers such as Headlines and other tracks on the more amped up side, whether we're talking about like Over, whether we're talking about I already mentioned Headlines and other various tracks, we never got Drake sounding hungry and like vicious to where it's just like, oh man, the ambience and their energy and the aura is just screaming straight presence. Like, oh man, Drake is on his shit. It wasn't until this moment, Stay Schemin' dropped April 17th, 2012. This is why this date has been marked. A track featuring Rick Ross and French Montana, being a single from Rick Ross's second mixtape, Rich Forever. And it isn't necessarily that Drake completely obliterated the rapper that he was dissing, but more so the bravado, the Candace, the performance. Like I've mentioned, the fact we never heard Drake like this before, and it happened to be a jab at the rapper Common that just tied everything in together. Now, it's pretty infamous, the beginning verse, it bothers me when the gods get to acting like the broads. Referencing Common, clearly mentioning the fact that he acting like Shawty, he acting like a female, he acting like a broad. And this was a small beef at the moment in time. It wasn't like there was anything crazy deep initially, but of course this started with Common diss Drake in the song Sweet, something that Common denied at first. But then whenever you go onto the track Sweet and he's dissing the guy that all he's doing is singing, he's sensitive, it's clear that it was about Drake. He went on to confirm this in Sway in the Morning.
Is he a target now?
He's a very successful artist, obviously, and I think, like I said, I think he's a talented artist too. I give credit where it's due, and I just try to speak the truth the way I see it. And I felt like in hip hop, it was a lot of that going on. Not beyond Drake, it still was, some artists I was just hearing, some artists I didn't even know that I was hearing, but Drake definitely fit in that category.
That Drake was a target of the diss verse, and that the way Common felt about it was sort of he was competitive. Like, if you part of the game, be expecting these sort of things, which I find hilarious because it's just like, at the moment we really didn't have any context. Like, it was just random. Like, where did this come from? With Drake even going as far as to say in an interview with XXL, obviously the whole tension with that whole camp has been brewing for a long time, and that was the first time someone had called me out personally. I reacted in a very poised way. First of all, I made sure it would be a run in the club because that's more painful than anything, as opposed to just being on a blog. I wanted to be on a record that you would have to stand around and hear every night for a few months. That was my whole strategy going into that. Instead of sounding hurt and malicious, I wanted to sound fun, get my shit off. Like I said, if it happens again, not that I want it, not that I welcome it, but I'm ready. I really enjoy writing bars, man. I'm not nervous about anybody saying anything to me, end quote. And it's important to note that after this, did the beef go any further? Were there any more songs dropped? The beef was actually squashed. Drake and Common did eventually run into each other at 2012 Grammys, but they happened to squash the beef there. Things didn't escalate, with Common himself saying, and I quote, "We had a talk, we had a conversation. It was a face-to-face, man-to-man, a positive thing. It was a good conversation. I've learned to respect him even more. I already thought he was a talented guy, but just from the conversation we had, I hold even more respect for him. We saw each other and the conversation was initiated. It was just a respectful conversation that needed to be had. So he knew that I'm not at him trying to destroy him as a human being. It was a hip hop battle to me. I had to put all of those things into hip hop. I gave him a pound, gave him a boom, and it was all love." Now, with this, you will feel, all right, this is how the story wraps up. Stay Scheming Drake's verse, a club banger, infamous, the first time we felt that sense of bravado. And even though Drake said he didn't want to be malicious, it did sound a bit like we didn't have this version of Aubrey ever, really. The only time after this, I believe, would be 5 a.m. in Toronto, and then going forward, we got other songs. But this was a very important part of Drake's history. And the part where this takes a complete 180 is the fact that it almost feels like it was just the fact that Common felt jealous about Drake singing. It almost felt like it was just the fact that he was jealous about someone having better commercial success than him, and him potentially just taking it as an insult to his own ego due to how he viewed rap. But then we will go on to find out that the reason the beef initially started is because Drake had relations with Serena Williams. This is something he would go on to confirm with Vlad TV. And what do you know? Another beef that sparks up because of a female. And this just adds extra spice, extra flair, extra flames into the history of this song, because of what initially felt like a random jab because of success, jealousy, envy, we now understand that this stemmed from all right, you were messing with Serena Williams. And Common didn't take that lightly. And then that's whenever Common decided to shoot the shots. That's whenever Drake responded accordingly, pretty menacingly, and a very contagious and addictive track. Stay Scheming, a track that's for the books, a French Montana verse that I know word for word that is pretty addictive. And Rick Ross, of course, doing his own thing on here. And that is the day the world started taking Drake serious. April 17th, 2012. The track Stay Scheming. Man, this is a song that always takes me back in time, and I'm happy it does. I'm happy that it's had the longevity to still sound great in 2023, and just seeing the way everything, at least for Drake on the diss song side of things. As far as Drake when it comes to disses, seeing the little baby steps that would eventually lead up to pivotal moments throughout his career that ascended him and completely obliterated him ultimately. With that,